All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so grateful to be able to give you this gift. We are sitting directly on a huge energetic hinge point right now, and those who take advantage of it are going to help usher in a new era. So if you're here, it's because you have been called to greatness. So make sure you grab a pen and a piece of paper. I expect you to have at least one epiphany, if not a couple, and settle in. Here we go. Let me guess. You're here because you want more. Something specific, something real, something big, something that keeps tugging at you even when you try to ignore it. And you feel you've genuinely been doing the work. You've been healing, reflecting, recalibrating, shifting, doing everything in your power to line up with the version of you who has it. But the thing you want, it still isn't here, or it seems to be moving in weird or wrong directions, or it's showing up in symbols and illusions instead of actual 3D world results. And now you're stuck in that uncomfortable in between where you keep asking yourself, where am I going wrong? Do I need to push or do more? Do I need to surrender, whatever that means? Am I right? Or do I need a sign, or do I need to pivot or change directions? Is what I'm doing in alignment or just complete and utter delusion? Here's the part that nobody teaches in front of a paywall. You think that you're lost, but you're standing exactly where you put yourself. You're standing in a phase of your evolution that has its own logic, rhythm, and timing, and nobody ever taught you how to read it. So that's what we're going to cover, because today I'm going to give you a detailed map of your own evolution, a 9-phase spiral that shows you exactly where you are in your cycle, what this phase actually means, and what posture you will need to take to finally move yourself forward. Once you can identify where you are and how you're currently moving through it, it's easy to grab the reins, take your power back, and ensure that you get what you want. Look, the bottom line is that even the most powerful, ambitious, self-aware person can and will sabotage their own growth because they simply cannot see where they are in their own cycle. So today I am not only handing you the map, but I am showing you exactly how to read it and use it to finally bring that desire, whatever it is, into fruition. At the end of this, if you decide that you want me to just map it for you, you can book a Meta Enneagram mapping session with me. I'll email you the information at the conclusion of this class, or if you're watching the replay, it's in the description below. But this class contains all you need to do it for yourself. No shame, of course, if you need me, but I'm withholding nothing from you today. So before we get into it, let me introduce myself for anyone who's new here. I'm Chris Rainwaters, Renegade Ritualist, your favorite real estate witch, and the creator of the Ritual of Light, which is a daily nervous system anchoring ritual that rebuilds your clarity, focus, and energy from the inside out. I also guide people through the 44-day Ritual of Light transformation journey, which is the structured deep dive where we walk the full Enneagram transformational spiral together so that you actually get to know it at a visceral level. I'm a system thinker, a spiritual engineer, a pattern decoder, a reality technician, and someone who has spent years piecing together the hidden mechanics behind transformation. And not because it sounded cool or because I wanted to be a manifestation coach, but because my life quite literally depended on it. I don't teach theory. I teach what I've tested relentlessly on myself first. If you'd like more credentials, I invite you to watch any of the 3 other masterclasses. And if you're watching the replay, I'll email it. Well, if you're watching it live, I'll email it to you in the follow-up email. And then if you're watching the replay, it'll be in the description below, or it'll be in the suggested playlist at the end of this class. My credentials, though, are not important right now. Your evolution is the only thing that matters. Every spiral, every breakdown, every breakthrough, Every moment where I thought that I was off path, but was actually right on time, that is where the system came from. Not the Enneagram itself, of course, that came from Gurdjieff or possibly even later than that. Um, and it's not even how I use and not even from how I use the double Enneagram inside the ritual of light. Because if you've done the ritual, attended the condensed masterclass, or read the grimoire, you already know the double spiral of force and form, the shock points, the Chronos and Kairos timing, the nervous system anchoring, and how all of that moves you through the 44-day embodiment arc. But that system is designed for ritual, not orientation. It shows you how to move energy through the body, not how to interpret what phase of your evolution you're actually in. This masterclass is different. This is the first time that I've taken the underlying mechanics, so the spirals, the timing, the shock points, and applied them outside the ritual as a way of mapping your actual lived transformation. This is how you wield the Enneagram, also now known as the face of God, to get what you want. I've never taught this publicly before. As I walked the transformation spirals again and again in my own life, I started recognizing that each phase had an archetypal signature, an internal flavor, if you will, a texture, a pattern that lined up uncannily with tarot archetypes, perfect symbolic mirrors of each phase of evolution. The ritual of light teaches you how to move through your evolution. This masterclass teaches you how to see where you are in your own evolution so that you can finally meet yourself exactly where you are, and from there intentionally and objectively move in the direction of your desire, whatever that may be. Different purpose, same architecture, new application. Because the truth is if you can't clearly see where you are in your own evolutionary cycle, then you can't effectively work with it. So today I'm giving you the map that finally makes your growth make sense. By the end of this masterclass, you will know what phase of your evolution you're actually in, what the sensations you're feeling really mean, why you're stuck or why you think you're stuck, what your next step actually is, whether you need insight, orientation, or deep guided transformation, and whether tarot, meta mapping, or the full 44-day ritual is even the right path for you from here. Because when you know where you are in the cycle, everything makes sense. Your confusion makes sense. Your timing makes sense. Your emotions make sense. Your lack of results make sense. Your breakthroughs make sense. And most importantly, you stop inadvertently sabotaging the very thing that you're trying to create. I just am finished, I'm finishing a ritual cycle myself. And this is me putting the map down so that I can go live my life again. I'm handing it to you. Okay, so now we need to name the thing that almost no one ever talks about, because this is the part where most people sabotage their growth without even realizing it. You're not stuck because you're unmotivated. You're not stuck because you're undisciplined. You're not stuck because the universe is punishing you or ignoring you. And you're definitely not stuck because you're not aligned enough, because we're all perfectly aligned with something. You're stuck because you've either misread the phase that you're in, or worse, you don't even know that you're in a phase. That's the whole problem. You think something is wrong, but what actually is happening is you're in a phase that requires a completely different posture than the one that you're using. Let me show you what I mean. Most people try to take action when their system is actually in a breaking down phase. They try to surrender when they actually are in a building phase. They try to stay positive when their psyche is trying to show them a pattern that must be seen before anything can progress. They panic when they feel nothing, when neutrality is the exact signal that the old cycle is complete and a new one is about to begin. They think they're confused when they're actually integrating. They think they should just trust more when what's really needed is structure, clarity, or orientation. In other words, you really are doing all the right things, but just at the completely wrong time. And that mismatch creates the illusion that nothing is working or why things seem to be getting worse. When this happens, it causes people to start spiraling, thinking that I must have done something wrong, or I must have missed something, or maybe I'm not meant for this, or maybe the universe is blocking me, or maybe I need a different method, or maybe I'm just delusional. No, you are not delusional. You are out of rhythm with your own evolution because no one ever taught you that transformation follows a predictable sequence, that each phase has an absolute purpose, that each point comes with its own emotional texture, that your nervous system reacts differently at each stage, and that the phase that you're in determines what will actually work. Without that awareness, of course you feel confused. Of course you question everything. Of course you oscillate between forcing and freezing. Of course you jump between strategies, teachers, or spiritual tools. Of course doubt is creeping in. Shit, maybe even your conviction, self-worth, or even your faith is wavering. It's not because you're scattered or undeserving. It's because you have no map, and so you don't know where you are. So if you leave with nothing else from this masterclass, leave with this. You are not the problem. Your timing is the problem. Your posture is the problem. Your interpretation is the problem. But the good news is all of that changes the moment that you understand where you are, what this phase means, what it requires from you, and what it absolutely does not require. That's what the Meta Enneagram gives you, a predictable pattern, a rhythm that you can follow, a way of understanding your own evolution so clearly that confusion becomes impossible. All right. Now that we've cracked open the real issue, let's look at what this system actually is and how to identify your phase. So now that we've named the real problem, the misreading of your own phase, let's talk about the system that finally solves it. Because this system is not the personality Enneagram, and it's different than anything you've seen before. This is not about types. It's not about labels. This is not about who you are. This is about where you are. The Meta Enneagram is a 9-phase evolutionary cycle that shows you the energetic posture, psychological texture, and embodied purpose of the moment that you are currently standing in. It's the objective mechanics of transformation, not the subjective meaning that you assign to it. It answers the 3 questions most people can't articulate. What exactly is happening to me? Why is this happening now? And what am I actually supposed to do with this? To build this system, I drew from the deep inner mechanics of the ritual of light, spiral dynamics, sacred timing, so Chronos and Kairos, the 9 stages of transformation, the shock points where energy must enter the system, the movement of force and form, and the archetypal signatures of tarot. So using the symbolic language that humans have used for centuries to navigate thresholds. But unlike the ritual, which uses the double Enneagram to move energy through the body, the Meta Enneagram uses one spiral to map your lived transformation. This is the key. The ritual of light shows you how to move through the cycle, but the Meta Enneagram shows you how to interpret the cycle. Different purpose, same architecture, new level of clarity. And here's where it becomes useful. Each of the 9 points has a distinct emotional texture, a predictable behavioral tendency, a recognizable sensation in the body, a tarot archetype that mirrors the internal movement, a specific posture required for progress, and a shadow posture that leads to sabotage. When you don't know which point you're in, you do the wrong thing at the wrong time and misinterpret it as failure. When you do know which point you're in, you instantly understand why things feel stalled or slow, why things feel chaotic or accelerated, why nothing is landing yet, why everything feels symbolic, why you feel neutral, numb, or electric, whether you are at the beginning, the middle, or end of a cycle, and what the correct next move actually is. This is why the system works. There is no phase you can be in that doesn't make sense once it is named. When you name the phase, you reclaim your power. And when you reclaim your power, your evolution accelerates. So here's what we're going to do next. I'm going to walk you through all 9 points, the internal signatures, the tarot mirrors, the sensations, the shadows, and how to know instantly which one you're in. But before we break them down individually, you need to understand the overall flow. So points 1 to 3 is activation. Points 4 to 6 is tension and breakthrough. Points 7 to 9 is embodiment and integration. This is the arc that you've been living your entire life without ever knowing it. And once you see it, you will never be confused again. Before we start walking through the 9 phases, you need to know one thing that changes everything about how you understand your own evolution. Every phase sits on a magical current. Points 1 and 2 are white magic. Point 3 is the turn into black magic. So sorry, I'm going to go back to points 1 and 2. So that's clarity, light, and creation. Point 3 is the turn into black magic. So that's shadow, fear, and limitation. Points 4 and 5 are black magic. So this is the descent, the unraveling, the void. Point 6 is the turn into red magic. So this is will, truth, and resurrection. Points 7 and 8 are red magic. So this is embodiment, power, and contribution. And points 9 to 0 are the gold gate. This is the integration of all 3. If you don't understand these current shifts, you will misinterpret your own evolution. You'll think that you're failing when you're actually descending. You'll think you're blocked when you're actually incubating. You'll think that you're supposed to act when you're actually supposed to rest. And you'll think that you've lost momentum when you're actually entering the golden gate. This is why people sabotage themselves, because they don't know which current their inner world is running on. So as we walk through each phase today, I'll show you not just the archetype and the sensation, but the magical current that you're standing in. Because once you know your current, you know the correct posture. And once your posture matches your phase, your evolution becomes inevitable. I go more in depth in the 3 magics in my original masterclass, which can again be found in the masterclass playlist linked below, and in the suggested playlist at the end of this class. If you're catching it on the replay, if you're live, I will be personally emailing it to you. This is a deep one, so you may need to come back and visit it. Before we walk point by point through the Meta Enneagram, you need to understand the deeper architecture underneath it, especially if you haven't watched any of my other masterclasses or are unfamiliar with the Enneagram in general. I will keep it brief because I'm assuming that this is a refresher for you at this point. So every cycle of creation or transformation, no matter the tradition, follows one universal structure. That structure is 3. 3 meaning the 3 forces: active, passive, and neutral. Active force meaning the spark, the will, the masculine, the penetrating direction. Passive force meaning the receptive field, the gestation, the feminine, the emotional expansion. And the neutral force meaning the integration or reconciliation, the synthesis, the new reality, the baby. In occult and spiritual traditions, this is the triangle of creation. In psychology, it's initiation, processing, integration. In the body, it's sympathetic, parasympathetic, ventral vagal. In the tarot, it's the emperor, the empress, the fool. In my ritual of light, it's force, form, sovereignty. And on the Meta Enneagram, these forces appear as the 3 shock points, or rather hinges. Point 3 is the passive force. This is the Empress, where desire drops inward and begins to change you, where you move from white to black magic. So as within, so without. The 3D real world collapsing to your internal real self. Point 6 is the active force. This is the emperor. This is where the pressure to act becomes unavoidable. You've reconciled the two, your outer and your inner world, and have come to the conclusion that there is a mismatch. You know how to fix it. You just need to do it now. This is the hinge from black to red magic. And point 9, the neutralizing force or the world. This is where the old self completes and the new self stabilizes. You've successfully, hopefully, shifted, healed, completed, birthed, whatever. Then it rolls into point 0, the fool, as the next threshold, where we shift from red magic back to white. We start anew. These 3 points outline the triangle inside the Enneagram. And if you don't understand them, you will always misinterpret your own evolution. Most people don't get stuck at random. And while you can get lost at any point in this transformation journey, usually they get stuck at one of these because they've hit a force that they don't recognize. Point 3 feels like emotional overwhelm. Point 6 feels like urgency or pressure. Point 9 feels like emptiness or neutrality or newness. But these aren't problems. They're just forces doing their job. And if you don't know that, you're going to fight them and sabotage your own cycle. So as we walk through each point, keep this in mind. Every transformation requires all 3 forces, and every force feels completely different. Understanding them is how you stop sabotaging you. And for the last time, the other masterclasses dive deeper into this if you need to understand this on a more foundational level. Okay, ready to walk all 9 points? Here we go. Let's start at the beginning. This is the moment before the cycle begins. This is the drive, the impulse, the pull towards something new. This is the desire for desire's sake. This is God wishing to experience something, literally anything. It's infinite possibility without direction. Point 0 begins with the fool. And I want to clarify something immediately. The fool is not stupid. The fool is not naive. The fool is not irresponsible. The fool is simply the part of you that is untouched by the past. He is, and I say he here because it's an inherently masculine archetype, but it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or whatever you identify as. This is an active archetype, so movement. This is the clean slate, a new day, the spark of life, that curiosity or desire, the moment before the quest begins, the part of you that remembers possibility. The fool stands at the cliff's edge because he is between worlds. He hasn't started his adventure yet. He only knows that he's starting one. He is in between, not his old identity anymore, but his new one hasn't fully crystallized yet. And you have felt this before. This is a restlessness or feeling like you just don't fit where you are. It's uncomfortable, or a curiosity or desire to explore or mate or experience something new, or a longing in your heart for something greater, something more. This is white magic in its purest form, light that has not chosen its direction yet. This is what Jesus spoke of when he said to become as the child, or what is referenced as the beginner's mind. Nothing is being forced. Nothing is already decided. Everything is available. It is pure potential. In magic, this is the moment creation begins, the let there be light moment. I want to pause here and explain something essential before we move on. Every archetype carries a light expression and a shadow expression, not necessarily good or bad, just 2 polarities of the same current. So if the energy expresses through shadow instead of light, it's going to shift your trajectory. It'll change how the phase feels, and it will bend your path away from your intention without you realizing it. This is one of the ways how people unintentionally sabotage themselves. The Fool's shadow is impulsivity, spiritual bypassing, jumping in or starting without awareness or a plan, chasing novelty instead of commitment, so shiny object syndrome. We're not going to go deep into the shadow just yet. We'll do that a little later, but for the moment, I want you to see the polarity. Just like reading tarot upright, the Fool equals possibility, and the shadow or reversed Fool equals escape. You'll know soon which one you're in, but before we dive deep into any one of the stages, let's cover the other ones first. So let's move on. So, point one, this is the spark. This is intention. This is white magic. This is where light begins to move. So, after possibility comes direction. This is the magician. This is the archetype of will, clarity, intention, and the conscious shaping of reality. If the Fool is the spark, the magician is the moment the spark becomes purpose. So, he stands between heaven and earth. One hand raised, one lowered, as above, so below, because he channels energy into form. On the table in front of him are the 4 elemental tools. We've got the wand, so fire, desire, will, the cup, water, emotion, intuition, the sword, air, clarity, truth, the pentacle, earth, embodiment, outcome. A true magician uses all of these to set his intention with precision. He draws on the wand to feel the desire honestly, the cup to align the emotional field, the sword to cut through distortion, the pentacle to imagine the outcome as already embodied. This is how he casts the first spell of the cycle, not outwardly, but inwardly. This is the part people misunderstand. Point one is not action. Point one is alignment. Point one is mastering manifestation, quote unquote. It is the moment where you name the direction, claim the identity shift, aim your energy toward the next version of you, and declare the next path of your evolution. Point one is white magic, and as such, it is imperative to remember that this is focused light, pure intention, the beginning before resistance appear. So, AKA all of the reasons why it's impossible or I can't, or whatever excuse you come up with to justify that it's just not for someone like me or whatever. This needs to be kept pure. No gray or pink magic here, if you know what I mean. Inverted, the magician becomes controlling, manipulating, forcing outcomes, bypassing embodiment, trying to make the timing obey them. So for now, just hold this simple polarity. Upright magician is intentional, wise alignment. Shadow or inverted magician is toxic masculinity, illusion of complete control. This is that distinction alone. It'll tell you whether your cycle is beginning clean or whether sabotage has already crept into your intention. All right. So point two, this is resourcing, momentum building, white magic. This is where direction becomes motion. So once intention is set at point one, we enter point two, which can be likened to the chariot. If point one is alignment, point two is mobilization. The chariot is the archetype of gathering tools, gathering energy, gathering support, gathering skill, gathering clarity, gathering the resources needed for the journey ahead, for this new life, whatever it is, this thing. This is where your desire begins to pull you forward, not through force, but through magnetic motion. The chariot shows a warrior standing confidently, not because the path is clear, but because the direction is known. He holds the reins, but the creatures providing the power to move, which are different depending on the deck that you're using, but they represent the dual forces, one black, one white, white magic and black magic. Being able to move forward evenly here is about learning to steer both, holding your excitement and your fear, your desire and your doubt, your vision and your shadow. That's why when you work with the Enneagram as a magical practitioner, you move from point 1 to point 4. You don't move from point 1 to point 2, because you know that as soon as you set your intention, every reason under the sun of why you can't will pop up. It's the natural flow. So the key here is to work with it in a balanced way to gather your tools so that you actually arrive where you plan on going. Yes, it is still white magic, but it is the outer edge of it. This is the gray area, if you will. So light is beginning to move, form is beginning to gather, momentum is beginning to build. But here's the thing that most people misunderstand. Point 2 is not mastery. Point 2 is preparation for mastery. It is the phase where you research, collect tools, learn frameworks, seek mentors, adjust your posture, stabilize your nervous system, build the skill or structure needed for what you asked for, what ritual needs to be done in order to get onto and through the black line of magic. I will note here that the more you get to know this framework, the more you understand why point 3 always requires a ritual to get past, but more on that later. Anyway, this point should feel like, okay, I think I can do this. This could actually be possible. I am excited, but I'm also scared. Things are looking like they're lining up, sort of. Or I think I know what I need. Or I feel movement, but I obviously don't have the thing yet or have arrived at my destination. So I'm not sure if I trust it yet, or if this thing is going to work for me, or if I'm going to make it to where I want to go. It's hopeful, but not solid. It's grounded. So excited, but not embodied. It's forward moving, but still fragile. I'll note here that the more times you intentionally experience this, the more confident you become and the less fear you feel when stepping onto the black magic line. Mastery always takes practice. So in shadow, the chariot becomes frantic movement or trying to go in too many directions at the same time, or like trying everything at once. So not just putting one foot in front of the other, or over researching or getting stuck in analysis paralysis, or seeking too many mentors. So again, pick one or a couple related things to focus on. You don't want to overload yourself or burn yourself out. Another one is constant strategy switching. So that's shiny object syndrome again, or outsourcing your power. So, saying, well, this is just how the world works and I have no control, or avoiding commitment by staying in like preparation mode. So you never start. I'd liken that to the hanged man in tarot. So you're standing in your own way. The shadow chariot is the proverbial self-help or healing hamster wheel. Upright chariot is useful, purposeful momentum. So hold this polarity. Upright chariot is resourced movement. Shadow chariot is scattered movement. Because this distinction determines whether your evolution is beginning clean or whether you're already diluting your power before the cycle truly begins. You see this all the time in productivity advice. And it's funny, that actually reminds me of a video that I just did on YouTube, unpacking productivity advice. A lot of people are right about cutting out excess to propel yourself forward, but they leave out the art, the feminine, the magic. But that's a rabbit hole for another time. So anyway, let's move on to point 3. So this is a big one. This is the first real shock point in the cycle. This is the passive force in the 3 forces of creation and where most people get stuck. This is the place where white magic ends and black magic begins. This is a hinge point. This is where the light of your intention, your seed, drops into the soil of your life. The Empress is the archetype of the fertile field, the receptive divine feminine, the one who allows, expands, gestates, nourishes, and multiplies. She is not action. She is not strategy, and she is not doing. She is becoming. She is receiving. She is imbibing. She is the passive force that makes creation possible. And here's the part almost no one understands. Not imbibing, I'm sorry, like gestating. I don't, digesting. The chariot's more like imbibing. Anyway, moving on. Um, so here's the point that almost no one understands here. This is the first shock point because creation requires disillusion. To grow something new, the old pattern, the old soil must break apart. It's like the old adage that you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. So point three often feels like the desire is getting bigger. That unreachable or impossible feeling is growing. Your emotions are stronger. Your intuition is louder. Your life is shifting and probably in mostly unexpected ways. Things are rearranging and you are suddenly very aware of what you do not have. And you're starting to realize just how much work it's going to be to get you where you want to be. It's almost second nature to get overwhelmed here, and it is so easy to get stuck here. This is the passive feminine force expanding around your intention. And if you have unhealed trauma or false beliefs, it's even easier to get stuck here. So if you think you are here, I need you to know that this is not chaos, nor is it failure. It is the womb stretching and preparing. This is one of the many, many reasons why nervous system regulation is so important. The Empress upright. So when you are aligned at point three, it's going to feel like creativity opening, ideas multiplying, sensitivity increasing, intuition heightening, greater awareness of possibility, a sense that something is forming, feeling the desire in your body. The Empress says that it's happening, even if you can't see it yet. She is the hinge for black magic, not because she's dark or dangerous, but because she is deep. She pulls you inward through your heart and into the soil, into the unknown, into the places where the light of white magic cannot reach without surrender. Point three is where you first feel the energetic weight of your desire. And most people panic because the very thing that they've been calling in suddenly feels way too real. This is where sabotage begins if you don't understand the phase. The shadow empress looks like emotional overwhelm, indulgence or avoidance, losing boundaries, nurturing everyone and everything except your intention, collapsing into the desire instead of holding it lightly. So, like putting too much importance on it, trying to feel ready instead of just being receptive, or what I would call overwatering the seed or control through emotion. It's the internal swirl of, I want it so badly, but I am afraid of what it will require. This is the psychological and energetic truth of black magic. You cannot enter it without confronting the parts of you that fear receiving. People think that they're blocked here. They're not blocked. They're just not realizing that they are expanding and simultaneously unwilling to receive what they need to fuel their expansion. They are stunted. They are dissolving old structures to make room for the new identity required to hold the thing that they want. But because they don't know that, they interpret the expansion as chaos. They think something is wrong. They try to fix it. They try to act. They push prematurely. They lose the passive posture of the Empress. And that's how the cycle collapses and why so many can't move forward. So point three in the body is going to feel tender. It's going to feel raw. It's going to feel emotional. It's going to feel like heightened intuition or increased sensitivity and a pull inward. This also a desire to nest or retreat, a sense of gestation, or this I know something is happening, but I just don't know what. This is the first turn inward in the cycle, the first moment that the external world goes quiet and your inner world gets loud. If you don't know this point on the map, you're going to think I'm losing momentum, or I'm slipping backwards, or I feel like I'm falling, or I'm getting emotional again. Why does this keep happening to me? Or something feels wrong. What could it be? But if you do know the map, you'll recognize that this is the Empress. This is the womb opening. This is the first shock point. This is the turn from light into depth. This is evolution. So the posture at point three, here's the key here. So at point one, the magician, you're setting your intention. At point two, that's the chariot. You're gathering what you think you need. At point three, you stop moving forward and let the energy move inward. This is not the time to act. This is the point to receive. So your job at point three is to allow, it's to feel, it's to hold, it is to soften. It is to trust in the soil. It is to stop interfering. And it is to let the desire take shape inside of you. Don't force anything. Just continue to gather and accept what is required of you to get what you want. This is the divine feminine posture that most ambitious people skip. And then they wonder why nothing manifests or why they can force an outcome, but nothing that is sustainable. So this is the root of almost every self-sabotage pattern. When you hit point three, you are supposed to receive, but you try to do. Or you collapse emotionally because you don't understand why everything feels so intense. Or you try to force momentum because you think that stillness means failure. So this is point three, the Empress, the first shock point, the first descent into the fertile darkness, the first moment that your desire stops being an idea and becomes energy taking form inside you. If you don't understand this phase, you will always mistake expansion for collapse. But when you recognize the Empress, everything starts to make sense. I'd like to remind you yet again, I know I promised, but if you haven't watched the other masterclasses, it may be a good idea at some point for you to do so. If you're with me and locked in and ready, let's move on. Real quick reminder, point three is just the first step into black magic. Once the womb opens and the desire takes root, the next thing that surfaces isn't action, it's truth. So that's where point four comes in, the high priestess. So this is our hidden limits. This is our subconscious fear. This is black magic. This is the descent into truth. So after that first shock point of three, the Empress, we sink deeper into black magic at point four. If the Empress is the womb stretching, the high priestess is the one who sits at the veil and says, now that you've said yes to this desire, let's look at everything inside of you that doesn't believe that it's possible. Point four is where your subconscious steps forward. The high priestess is the archetype of the hidden script, the unspoken fear, the secret belief, the part of you that knows more than you admit, the intuitive awareness of what's really going on inside. She sits between the pillars, behind the veil, holding the scroll. She knows what you've written in your own book of life, especially the parts that you have tried to ignore. So energetically, point four is the moment where your inner world reveals the limits around your desire. not to shame or punish you, but to show you what must be seen before this evolution can continue. This is why in my work, point 4 is the point of limitations, beliefs, fears. What if this never happens? What if I fail? What if I lose everything? What if I'm exposed as a fraud or just exposed at all? What if I get it and I can't hold on to it? If point 3 is I can feel it forming, then point 4 is now I see everything that might stop it. When you're upright in high priestess energy, this phase is going to look at honest self inquiry, powerful dreams or synchronicities, intuitive hits about what's really blocking you, awareness of old stories surfacing, flashes of, oh, this is why I keep doing that. Deep, quiet, contemplative energy, a desire to pull back and listen. It may be uncomfortable. Yes, it may feel very uncomfortable, but there's also a sense of relief in finally seeing clearly. Upright high priestess says you are not broken. You are just running an old code. So let's read it together. This is black magic, but remember, it's not evil. It is deep, feminine underworld energy where the truth lives below the surface. This is where you begin to see the patterns that you've inherited, the identities that you unconsciously agreed to, the vows that you made in pain, the quiet ways that you've been sabotaging yourself. Not to stay there, but to bring them into conscious awareness so that they can be rewritten. In shadow, the high priestess is where people get lost in confusion and fog, over intellectualizing their blocks, obsessive shadow work with no integration, constant card pulls, reading, scrolling for answers, and seeking for signs, looking for something external, using intuition against themselves, staying mysterious or vague to avoid commitment, hiding parts of themselves out of shame. She becomes, I know something is wrong, but I refuse to directly look at it. Shadow or reversed high priestess is that energy of, I'm confused, but I'm not actually asking the right questions. I don't know, when a part of you absolutely does know, or the universe isn't giving me a sign when you don't need one. Your body already has given you plenty. It is spiritual static. You are getting signals because you always are getting signals, but you are not willing or ready to decode them yet. And here's the paradox. The more you resist seeing, the more intense the signals become. So at point 4, this often shows up as anxiety spikes, weird off feelings that you can't explain, self-doubt disguised as discernment. I'm just a realist, right? Over consuming information to avoid action, or freezing because there are just too many possibilities, or it's all just too much or overwhelming. Point 4 is sneaky because it can feel like tightness in the chest or throat, a sense of being watched or evaluated or judged because you are by yourself, feeling exposed even when nobody is looking, looping thoughts at night, an urge to isolate and withdraw, heightened sensitivity to other people's opinions, a feeling of if they really saw me, they might leave. And underneath all of that, there are parts of me that I still don't feel safe revealing. Sound familiar? That's because point 4 is not just about limitations in your outer world. It's about the parts of yourself that you have not yet allowed to come into the light. Your desire is asking you to become more visible, more powerful, more yourself. Point 4 surfaces the places where that visibility still feels dangerous. So at point 4, your job is not to bully yourself into better beliefs. It's not to recite affirmations robotically that you don't actually feel. It's not to gaslight or to try to bypass yourself into it's fine, high vibes only, right? Or push past fear with brute force. High priestess correct posture is honesty, it's witnessing, it's naming, it's listening, it's letting what's unconscious become conscious. It's letting what's vague become specific. This is where you gently ask, what do I really believe about this? What am I afraid will happen if I get what I want or if I don't? What do I think I'll lose? Whose voice am I still carrying? What parts of me still feel unsafe being seen? Point 4 is where you sit with yourself in radical honesty without making what you find mean that you're unworthy. So this is radical acceptance. You're not trying to fix everything at once. You're just turning on the light in the room. So if you don't understand this phase, you will almost always assume that something is wrong with you that cannot be fixed, or you'll label yourself as blocked, or you'll spiral into shame or self-criticism. You will binge more content to find the right framework or the answer, or you'll numb out, dissociate, and avoid the process completely. You might tell yourself that I guess I'm just not ready, or maybe this isn't for me, or it's too hard, or I must not be healed enough, or my intuition must be broken. But what's actually happening is that you've hit the high priestess checkpoint and you're being invited to see the real edges of your current identity so that you can walk forward with your eyes wide open. When you recognize point 4 for what it is, you can say, oh, this is the part where my fears show themselves. This is the part where my subconscious steps forward. This is not a sign to stop. This is a sign to listen, name, and choose. So that's point 4, the high priestess. The deep, quiet part of the cycle where your hidden stories rise to the surface, not to condemn you, but to be witnessed and rewritten. If you mistake this phase for failure, you will either run from yourself or camp out in I'm blocked forever. But when you recognize it for what it is, the moment that your inner world finally tells you the truth, you stop making your fear the enemy. You start making it information. So once we move past that, we go into point 5, which is sacred structure, vows, and again, we're still on black magic. This is the point of no return. So if point 4 is now you see it, point 5 is now choose what you will live by. So what are you gonna do with it? This is the realization that it cannot be unseen or unknown. So this is the phase of commitment, integrity, sacred structure, chosen rules and rhythms, alignment between what you know and how you live. So in the Meta Enneagram, this is the point of no return. And when you're working with it magically, Chronos and Kairos tend to line up here. So you cannot go back to pretending that you do not know what you know. You can either step into integrity with it, or you can consciously choose your old pattern. The Hierophant in tarot is the archetype of tradition and teaching, spiritual technology, codes of conduct, lineages and frameworks, and the bridge between divine principle and daily practice. So in this phase, your system is asking, what am I actually going to live by now that I have seen the truth? So you are still in black magic here. So the underworld work is not yet finished. This is where you build the inner scaffolding that can carry you through the breakthrough of point 6. Basically, you fucked around, you found out, and now what are you going to do with that information? So when you're in upright hero fit energy, so in integrity, point five is going to feel like making clear decisions about what you will and will not do, choosing a practice or structure that and then actually showing up for it, refining your standards and your boundaries, being honest about what your life must change into, recognizing where your behavior has to catch up to your insight. Here, you take everything you saw at point four and the intention that you set at point one, and you say, this belief cannot come with me. This pattern cannot survive in the life that I am building. This is the rhythm my nervous system needs in order to hold my desire. These are the rituals and habits that make my evolution non-negotiable. When you examine the tools that you've gathered to bring that desire into fruition and make an informed, you examine the tools that you've gathered and to bring that desire into fruition, whatever it is, and make an informed, enlightened choice. So this often looks like committing to a stabilizing ritual or practice. So maybe it's meditation, breath work, journaling, walking, strength training, or a spiritual discipline of some sort. For me, it was reclaiming my life through a daily ritual that didn't require hours, just consistency, intention, and integrity. A structure that was small enough to maintain, but powerful enough to transform. It also looks like choosing one or two teachers or frameworks instead of 20. So this is where you stop scrolling for answers and start walking the path. Focus strengthens expansion. It also could look like setting a real boundary with your time, energy, or relationships. So this is not martyrdom. This is not overextending. This is just an honest, grounded assessment of what truly supports your evolution. Could also look like telling the truth to someone who needs to hear it. So not to fix them, but to free you. Honesty is a structural choice. This also could look like taking responsibility for what is actually yours and only yours. Your thoughts, your behaviors, your emotional hygiene, your energetic posture. Nothing more, nothing less. These are the kinds of structural shifts the Hierophant asks for. Not perfection, but integrity. The Hierophant upright is not about blind obedience. It is about conscious covenant. You decide. If I truly want what I say I want, this is the path I will walk, and these are the vows I will keep. In shadow, point five is where people hand their power away. So shadow hierophant looks like clinging to external authority so that you don't have to choose, following rules that are not actually yours, performing alignment instead of living it. This is spiritual bypass, and it will always come back and bite you in the ass. Using shoulds and supposed to instead of inner truth. So I call this shoulding yourself to death. Or shaming yourself with spiritual or self-help dogma. Or overcorrecting, becoming rigid, punishing, or perfectionistic. So it's going to sound like, if I don't follow this method perfectly, then it's not going to work. Or so-and-so said that I have to do it exactly this way. Or real spiritual people do X, so I guess I have to. Or I will just keep studying until I feel worthy enough to begin. Shadow Hierophant is obedience without inner agreement. You contort yourself to fit a structure instead of choosing the structure that actually serves your soul and your desire. This is where people swap one cage for another. They leave the old pattern, but instead of sovereignty, they pick up spiritual rigidity, hustle culture rules, dogma, or someone else's blueprint and call it integrity. So what point five feels like in the body somatically, it often feels like a heavy sense of, I cannot unknow this now. A pressure in the chest or solar plexus around responsibility, a mix of relief and weight, like taking sacred vows, a desire to simplify, streamline, or clean house, or a pull towards structure, routine, or ritual, or it's a sober, grounded energy that is less emotional than point 3 and less foggy than point 4. So you may notice that you are suddenly irritated with your own excuses, or you feel called to clean, organize, or reset your space, or you want to put things on paper, budgets, schedules, plans, commitments, or you feel a quiet but firm internal voice saying, it is time. This is your system aligning around a new standard. So at point 5, your job is not to find the perfect system or become a spiritual soldier or punish yourself into discipline, which brings me a visual of those Catholic priests who like whip themselves, as penance or whatever, or take on every rule that you've ever heard all at once. Your job, your posture here is choosing fewer but truer commitments, bringing your life into integrity with what you already know, deciding what support structures are required for where you are going, and letting go of teachings, teachers, or habits that no longer match your evolution. This is where you ask, given what I now see, what must become non-negotiable? What practices actually stabilize me, not just impress or enchant me? What containers and agreements will hold me as I move into the next phase? What do I need to stop pretending that I do not know? Point 5 is where you become brutally honest about what your desire will require and whether you are willing to meet it with integrity. So this is the phase of truth telling, clarity, personal accountability, energetic cleanup, refinement, alignment without performance, choosing the correct posture before action. It's not action, it's not embodiment, and it is not union, not quite yet. It's the point directly before. So it's the last internal adjustment before the hinge point at point 6 activates. So if you don't understand or misread this phase, you will likely think that you are stuck again because everything feels heavy and everything feels heavy and serious. You'll mistake the call to integrity for punishment or karmic payback. Either you're going to double down on old rules or reject all structure entirely, or stay in endless preparation, never actually making a real choice, or keep consuming teachings instead of embodying any of them. You might say things like, I guess I'm just bad at consistency, or I know what to do, I just don't do it, or I don't want to do it, or I keep waiting to feel ready, or I don't know which path, teacher, or structure to choose, so I'm just going to keep searching. What is actually happening here is that you have reached the point of no return and you are hesitating to cross it. Your evolution is asking, will you choose the structures that match your next self, or will you keep living by the old ones? When you recognize point 5, you can reframe it. This is not the universe withholding from you. This is not proof that you are lazy or broken. This is the phase where you write the terms of your next reality and decide to live by them. So this is point 5, the Hierophant, the point of no return, the place where truth becomes structure, desire becomes covenant, and your evolution stops being an idea and becomes a way of life. The moment that you look directly at yourself and say, if I walk forward, I cannot walk as who I have been. If you mistake this phase for failure or punishment, you will either submit to someone else's rules or you will run from structure altogether. If you recognize it as the moment of sacred commitment, you step into the kind of integrity that makes breakthrough at point 6 inevitable. If you're feeling like your brain is full right now, Good, because this is not meant to be memorized on a first pass. So let this kind of wash over you. You can come back and map yourself later. Which brings us to our next hinge, which is the Emperor. So this is truth. This is action. This is the rise after the descent, the hinge for red magic. So if point 3 is the emotional expansion and point 4 is the subconscious revelation and point 5 is the integrity check, then point 6 is the moment that everything snaps into alignment. Point 6, or the Emperor, is the second shock point. This is the active force. This is the hinge between black and red magic. This is the moment where the pressure becomes undeniable, where the truth crystallizes, where you finally see what must change and what could be, and you realize, oh, it's me. I'm the one who has to move. The Emperor is structure, sovereignty, discipline, authority, alignment in action, truth that becomes motion, the moment that you stop negotiating with your fear. He sits on a throne because he represents what is unshakable. He carries the Ankh because he represents life through form. He wears armor beneath his robe because he leads with vulnerability, but protects what matters. He is not impulsive. He is not emotional. He is purposeful. Point 6 is not chaos. It is decisive clarity. So point 6 energetically is the moment the internal and external world collide. All the emotional movement from points 3 to 5 suddenly need an expression. You've expanded at point 3. You've seen your truth at point 4. You've chosen your posture at point 5. And now the energy can no longer stay inside. Point 6 is where your desire stops being a feeling and becomes a command. This is the shift from, I hope this works, or I want to be, to this is happening and here is what I'm doing next. This is the esoteric I am. Real magic begins here, not because it's aggressive. I'm not talking toxic male hustle culture BS here, but because it's embodied, all encompassing. It is will plus truth plus motion. This is the difference between doing and being. So when aligned, point 6 is going to feel like, I can't keep living this way. Something must change right now, this very second. I know what the next step is. This is going to be uncomfortable, but this is correct. My boundaries matter. I am not waiting for permission. I am responsible for the life that I'm creating. Point 6 is the moment you stop outsourcing power and reclaim your sovereignty. Upright energy, Emperor energy, looks like telling the truth you've been avoiding, breaking a pattern, making a real world adjustment, taking the first concrete step toward embodiment, setting a boundary, following through, choosing the harder right over the easier familiar. Point 6 is not about perfection. It's about direction and devotion in action. When misunderstood, point 6 becomes aggression. It becomes righteousness. It becomes forcing outcomes, punishing yourself into change, taking action to avoid feeling, cutting people off without discernment, becoming authoritarian toward your own psyche, mistaking urgency for alignment. Shadow Emperor tries to dominate reality instead of partnering with it. He's the part of you that says, I'll make this happen by any means necessary. And that is not devotion. That is fear wearing armor. Point 6 often feels like heat in the chest or solar plexus, urgency, the real kind, not panic, adrenaline mixed with clarity, a strong, I need to move now sensation, grounded determination, the end of rumination, and the beginning of embodiment. There's little confusion here, just a sense of it is time. I'll add a little note on the flip side here. When you're acting from a wounded emperor, you don't always see what you've actually embodied until point 9. So if you think that you're at point 6, but you're not sure whether your subconscious has been following this structure in a balanced, beneficial way, and most people aren't on their first few cycles, which is exactly why they get stuck here, make a mental note to revisit that when we reach the end of the cycle. Point 9 will tell you the truth of the emperor that you've become. Your job here is to act on the truth that you discovered at point 4, honor the integrity that you chose at point 5, move in the direction your soul already decided, take the step that you've avoided, the one that actually matters. Let your will and your alignment work together. Point 6 is where you become the version of you who can hold what you've asked for, not in fantasy, not in emotion, but in form. This is why red magic begins here, because this is the moment that your energy moves outward with purpose. So if you don't understand this phase, you're going to likely hesitate, even though you feel the push. You're going to overthink instead of move. You're going to collapse back into point 4. You're going to try to feel ready again. You're going to avoid the action that would actually change things. You're going to tell yourself that you need more clarity. You're going to keep preparing instead of stepping, or you're going to go the opposite extreme. So you're going to act impulsively. You're going to blow up your life. You're going to make huge decisions without grounding. You're going to take action out of panic or desperation, not alignment. Both are misunderstandings of the same force. But when you work with this energy intentionally, you know that point 6 is not panic. Point 6 is purpose. So that is point 6, the emperor, the second shock point, the rise after the descent, the moment that your desire moves from the inside to the outside, where truth becomes action, where sovereignty becomes real. The hinge where black magic dissolves and red magic ignites. If you don't understand this phase, you will either collapse into fear or explode into force like a firework. But when you recognize the emperor, you understand the simplest truth of creation. There comes a moment when the universe asks, are you willing to act as the person you are becoming? Point 6 is the moment that you say yes. So when the emperor acts at point 6, he sets a new reality in motion. And once reality is in motion, it becomes visible, like dominoes tipping over and making like a cool design or picture, right? That visibility is point 7, the sun. This is the moment where the work that you did in the dark begins to shine in the light. So point 7 is embodiment. This is red magic. This is radiance and contribution. So after the decisive ignition of point 6, the emperor, the energy shifts into point 7. This is the sun. This is the phase where everything that you've been working toward internally finally begins to express externally. It's the moment where clarity replaces fog. Confidence replaces doubt. Vitality returns to the body. Your energy expands outward instead of collapsing inward. Action feels natural, not forced. Opportunities respond to you. People feel the shift in your presence. This is red magic in its purest form. Not the struggle, not the breaking, not the descent, but the embodied rising, the phoenix. The sun is the archetype of visibility, embodiment, radiance, confidence without arrogance, trust in motion, the self expressed without distortion, giving from overflow, not depletion. The child on the horse in the traditional card is naked for a reason. Nothing to hide, nothing to defend, nothing to prove. Point 7 is the phase where your internal alignment finally becomes visible in the world. So when you're aligned at point 7, life is going to feel like, oh, this is working. I feel clear. I know what to do next. This feels like me. I trust myself here. Eagerness without urgency, momentum without burnout, joy without fragility. Your system is no longer reacting, it is creating. This is the first phase where you feel capable, you feel congruent, you feel like the version of you who can actually hold what you're calling in. This is embodiment, not good vibes. It's earned confidence, lived confidence, rooted confidence. So the shadow sun is going to look like overextending, overgiving, forcing productivity, trying to maintain the high, performing the new identity instead of living it, arrogance or superiority, or not resting because you're afraid that momentum will collapse. This is what happens when you mistake point 7 for the finish line instead of what it actually is, the first expression of the new identity, not its completion. The shadow sun is the I have to stay on top energy that burns people out and throws them off the spiral entirely. Upright sun radiates, shadow sun scorches. So point 7 often feels like warmth in the chest or face, an openness in the shoulders and the heart, an increased breath capacity, a natural confidence, a grounded enthusiasm, clarity without tension, a sense of inner sunlight. It's the phase where your nervous system said, yes, this is who I am now. Your job at point 7 is to embody, express, practice, play, share, participate, and shine without performing. This is where you begin to live the new identity in real time, not perfectly, but consciously. This is the first phase where contribution becomes possible. You give, not to get, but because you have. If you misunderstand this phase, you will overextend yourself. You will think the momentum means to push harder. You will mistake embodiment for invincibility. You will abandon your practices. You will chase applause or money. You will lose the grounded clarity that you just earned. You will burn out and fall back into point 4 wounds. Most people fall off the cycle here because they think that the sun means that I have made it. But point 7 is not the destination. It's the embodied midpoint of the red magic line. It is the flowering, not the fruit. When you understand that, you stay grounded enough to continue the evolution into point 8. So this is point 7, the sun, the radiant phase, the embodied phase, the moment that your inner transformation finally becomes visible in the world. This is where your energy speaks louder than your effort, where people feel your shift before you say a word, and where you begin to live what you once only imagined. So here's the thing about point 7. When your inner work finally shows up outside of you, there is a moment of celebration and then a very real moment of pressure. Because once the sun reveals what it's been growing, the cycle reaches its final test. Can you hold what you have created? Can you sustain it? Can you stay with your evolution long enough for it to become your new baseline? That test is point 8, strength. This is where the solar glow meets the embodied grit. So this is integration, endurance. We're still red magic here. So this is pressure into power. Point 8 is where every cycle tightens, because integration isn't gentle. It requires compression. You can't birth anything new, energetically or otherwise, without some form of labor. Strength is not force. Strength is staying with what you've built long enough for it to become you. This is red magic at its most refined, not the explosive action of point 6 or the radiant visibility of point 7, but the quiet, relentless endurance that turns embodiment into identity. In tarot, strength is a woman with a lion. She's not fighting it or dominating it or running from it. She partners with the force inside of her. That is point 8. And yes, her here, this is a very feminine energy. This phase isn't about proving anything. It's about staying open while the energy completes its integration. Your desire is already moving into the world. Your job now is to hold the vibration without collapsing into doubt, fear, or old programming. So, point 8 often feels like pressure, contraction, self-doubt reactivating, so like imposter syndrome, exhaustion after momentum, fear of losing progress, fear of being seen differently, fear of what comes next, emotional intensity, physical intensity. This is the part that everyone misinterprets because they think that the pressure means that something's wrong, when in reality, it means that the cycle is almost complete. You are being shaped into someone who can carry the thing that you asked for. And if you don't allow it to happen, you will have a stillborn. This is the alchemy of red magic. White magic sets the desire. Black magic breaks down what blocks it. Red magic forges you into the vessel that can hold it. Point 8 is the forging. It's the emotional heat, the spiritual weight, the physical demand, the psychic endurance. The shadow of point 8 or distortion here is going to look like striving, overworking, forcing outcomes, trying to control other people, emotional collapse, martyrdom, quitting because it got too hard, self-punishment, panic spirals, or pulling the plug on everything that you built at point 7. This is where so many people abandon the cycle right before the transformation completes. They sabotage themselves, often without even realizing that they're doing it. Because if you don't know that you're at point 8, you think the pressure means that you're failing, when in reality, the pressure means that you're being refined. This is the energetic compression that creates crystals. And what are crystals? They are nature in mathematical and structural symmetry, formed only under heat, pressure, and time. Point 8 works the same way. If you misread the pressure, you collapse. If you understand it, you crystallize. So point 8 doesn't ask you to do any more. It just asks you to hold firm and stay open, to breathe through the pressure, to stay conscious through the contraction, to hold the lion instead of trying to tame it or run from it. This is where the nervous system upgrades. This is where the old identity dissolves. This is where everything finally clicks into place. Point 8 is where your evolution becomes irreversible. When the pressure of point 8 has done its job, when the old structure has cracked, when the new identity has stabilized under heat, and when the refinement is complete, something subtle but unmistakable happens. The pressure stops. Not because you escaped it, but because you're done. You became the version of yourself who can hold what you've been building. And that shift ushers you into the final point of the cycle. Point 9, the world, the gate of gold magic, the neutralizing force, the phase where everything you've moved through, the intention, the gathering, the descent, the initiation, the embodiment, the refinement, integrates into a new reality. Let's talk about point 9. Ooh-wee. This is gold magic, baby, the neutralizing force, integration and completion. Point 9 is the culmination of the entire cycle. It is the moment the system stabilizes, the moment the new identity becomes real, where it crystallizes, the moment everything you have been moving through finally comes together. If point 7 is embodiment and point 8 is refinement, point 9 is completion. This is the world in tarot, the moment of wholeness, the full circle, the integration of everything that came before it. So what point 9 actually is it's not a feeling, it is a state. It is the moment where your nervous system stops gripping and settles. It's the moment that the inner war ends. It is the moment that the energy that you have been shaping finally locks into place. This is the neutralizing force, the reconciliation of opposites, the place where force and form meet and unify. In magic, this is the current of gold magic, the alchemical moment where black and red reconcile, the moment the fire cools into structure, the moment that sovereignty emerges. You could call it 5D or quantum leaping or reality shifting or manifestation, but this is the culmination of the process of creation through transformation. This is the moment that your desire becomes real inside you, whether or not the external result has appeared yet. So point 9 often feels like quiet, neutrality, calm, clarity, peace, a sense of space in the body, a completion, a grounded satisfaction, the absence of urgency, the end of emotional charge, the I can finally breathe again, or I understand what all that was for. There is no high here. There's no frenzy. There's no push. Point 9 is just the new normal. It is the moment where you look at yourself and realize that I am not who I was when this began. Even if nothing external has changed yet, your internal world has shifted so completely that reality has no choice now but to catch up. Point 9 is the quiet before the next beginning. It is the new identity settling into the body. So upright, the world is integration, it's closure, it's mastery, it's synthesis, it's completion, it's wholeness, it's sovereignty. It is a new baseline of being. It is how the cycle clicks. The world says you did not force this, you became this. And this is why most people miss point 9, because they expect fireworks or epiphanies. But point 9 feels like truth, not sparkle. It feels like the simplest thing in the world. Because once you have become the version of you who can hold the desire, there is no longer any resistance. The cycle is complete. So shadow or distorted point 9 is going to show up as emotional numbness, collapsing into neutrality instead of integrating, avoiding the next beginning, especially if you quote unquote didn't get what you wanted, drifting or dissociating, mistaking stillness for stagnation. I guess this is just as good as it gets. False acceptance, spiritual bypassing, refusing to claim the completion. So basically not giving yourself or allowing yourself closure, or mistaking burnout for completion. Shadow 9 is crossing the finish line, collapsing on the ground, and then swearing that you're never going to run or walk ever again. It's giving birth and then abandoning the baby. It's writing the book, but never letting anyone read it. It's birthing the masterclass, but not teaching it to anyone. It is hiding in neutrality instead of being anchored by it. The key difference is this: upright 9 feels spacious. Shadow 9 feels vacant. Upright 9 feels whole. Shadow 9 feels hollow. This is the moment that most people skip or gloss over because it doesn't give them dopamine. So the posture of point 9 is really simple. Acknowledge the completion, claim the identity that you have become, let the nervous system reset, let the cycle land, Allow the new baseline to stabilize. Do not rush the next intention. Honor the work that you just moved through. Point 9 is integration, and integration requires stillness. You do not plant a seed the moment a fruit is harvested. You let the soil breathe. You let the seasons change. You take a minute. This is the energetic truth of point 9. It is the breath between cycles, the holy pause, the golden gate. Point 9 is the hinge between worlds. It is the end of the old self, the stabilization of the new self, the reconciliation of all three magical forces, the energetic completion of the cycle, the moment the next desire begins to stir under the surface. Point 9 is the place where force and form resolve into sovereignty, where white, black, and red magic unify into gold. But gold does not begin the next cycle. Gold is the gate, the alchemical lift that determines whether you spiral upward or downward. And then very quietly, something starts to open. A tiny spark appears, a new curiosity, a whisper of possibility. Sometimes it's going to be like, well, that didn't work, but what needs to shift so that I can try again? And sometimes it's, wow, that was incredible. Let's do it again. But a lot of times, and especially if you're not familiar with these mechanics, it'll be something closer to, wow, that was great, but how did I do it? How do I do this again? Those are the people who manifest sporadically, or ones that are stuck in that easy come, easy go kind of frequency. Or how do I make sure that I never do that again, that never happens again? That's the person who sabotages themselves and goes down in flames, right? That pure tower moment. So this is point 0, the next fool, the next cycle. The key is not to skip to point 0. Honor point 9, because point 0 will come naturally. The cycle cannot begin again until this one is fully complete. So that's point 9, the world, the gold gate. The moment integration becomes identity and identity becomes reality. If you do not understand point 9, you're going to think that the stillness means that nothing is happening. But when you recognize it, you realize that everything you set in motion has finally landed. Yes, this is completion. It's sovereignty. This is the hinge that opens the door to the next evolution. And once the gold gate has done its work, the fool begins to stir. The baby cries. You start to realize when there is everything, there is also nothing. Where there is the macro, there is the micro. As within, so without. And then naturally we find ourselves back at point 0, the fool. But now we are initiated. This is the return. This is initiated white magic. We are in the gold magic current, the beginning of the next spiral. So once the gold gate completes its work, something subtle but unmistakable appears in your field. So this is going to be a spark, a curiosity, a pull toward the next beginning. We're back at the fool, but now this isn't the fool that you met before, is it? This is the fool at the beginning of a cycle that is untouched potential. The fool at the end of a cycle is now initiated potential. Possibility shaped by everything that you have just lived, dissolved, embodied, and integrated. He is no longer naive. He is clean. Point 0 is the moment where your field resets to white magic, but it is white magic informed by gold. This matters. Gold doesn't dissolve into white. Gold powers it. Gold raises it. Gold charges the new beginning with memory, discernment, sovereignty, and alignment. That is why this fool sees farther than the last one. He carries the wisdom of the cycle behind him, and yet he stands at the edge again. not because he's failed and not because he's starting over, but because evolution spirals. It doesn't circle. Every point zero is an octave shift. So you can either rise into a higher octave, aligned, refined, and strengthened by truth, or you can drop into a lower octave, distorted by fear, illusion, or wounded desire. This is where intention matters more than ever. Point zero asks only one question. Now that you know who you are, what will you become next? It does not demand action. It does not demand clarity. It does not demand certainty. It only asks for honesty. This is the pause before the next inhale of creation, the moment where life, God, will, the I am begins to pull you forward again. This is why you can't rush point zero, because if you force a new intention before the gold gate has stabilized inside of you, you repeat the last cycle at the same octave. If you collapse here, you fall into fool's gold, the earthly imitation of sovereignty without the substance behind it. But if you stand here, even for one breath, one present, aware, initiated breath, you can feel the shift. Your desire rises differently. Your body responds differently. Your intuition speaks with more precision. Your system feels open rather than hungry. This is the true beginning. This is the full stepping forward with everything he has earned, the innocence of possibility paired with the sovereignty of someone who has walked the full spiral. Point zero is not something you try to enter. It is something that you become. And when the spark catches, the magician rises again. A new cycle begins, a new octave, a new evolution. This is the architecture of transformation. Thank you. So now that you've walked all 9 points, you probably feel something settling, clarity, recognition, or maybe you're totally confused and completely lost. Wherever you landed, it is totally valid, because this work meets you exactly where you are. Because that reaction, whatever it is your orientation point. It can show you exactly to where you are in your cycle. And from there, the next step is never random. It depends on where you actually landed in the spiral. So instead of guessing, hoping, or trying to fix yourself, here's how to choose your next move based on the mechanics we just went through. So right now, you're probably in one. Oh, did I go? Yes, I did. Okay, so right now you're probably in one of 3 places. Either one, holy shit, this explains everything, or you are saying, okay, but how do I actually use this in real life? Or you are at the 3rd place, which is, I think I am totally lost in the woods here. Good, because this is exactly where my work branches into the pathways that serve each type of seeker. First, let's make sure that you have 100% conviction of where you are in your own transformation cycle first. So before you take your next step, let's get you completely oriented and grounded right here and right now. The key is to check in with your actual lived experience, not where you think you should be. So let's take 3 deep breaths together. First one in, hold, and out. Next one in, hold, and out. And last one in, hold, and out. Close your eyes for a moment and feel into your body. Notice your emotional posture and just kind of tune in as best you can. Now, I'm going to give you a few slides, a few descriptions here, and match it to what you're feeling, okay? So the first one is if you feel raw, tender, overwhelmed, or like everything is just too much. You're probably stuck somewhere before point 3, meaning the descent into truth hasn't stabilized. So real world examples here is crying easily or feeling fragile. Um, Being overstimulated by daily tasks, even the small ones. You can't make simple decisions. Everything feels like just one more thing I can't handle. Or you keep saying, I just need a minute, or I just need a break. Physical body feels heavy, puffy, or foggy. Or you're procrastinating because you're scared that you're gonna break. The shadow indicator here is you're avoiding the truth that your body is trying to tell you. So what this means is that you need to refine your intention or gather tools or support before moving forward. The next one is if you're if you're seeing your patterns, fears, or sabotage clearly, and it hurts, it's causing you suffering, physical suffering, you are likely at point 4. This is the shadow surface. So real world examples here is intrusive thoughts returning, flare-ups of chronic illnesses or autoimmune symptoms, PTSD loops are being triggered, depression spikes, self-harm impulses are resurfacing. Why am I like this spirals? Emotional flashbacks, looping on past mistakes. Your shadow indicator here is you think seeing the problem is the problem. No, seeing it means that the truth is finally visible, but you are avoiding dealing with it. If you feel pressure to choose, commit, or draw a line in the sand, then you're likely at point 5. So this is the tipping point. Real world examples here are you keep saying, I know what I should be doing, but you don't do it. You avoid texts, emails, decisions, or responsibility. You start something, but then immediately distract yourself. Or you're fantasizing about the goal, but not moving toward it. Or you're feeling guilty about not doing the thing, whatever it is, or you're waiting for a sign. The shadow indicator here is that you're hoping clarity will appear without making the devotion shift. But no one is coming to save you. You have to reconcile and save yourself. If you feel urgency or panic and the sense of it's time, then you're at point 6, the emperor. So real world examples here is finally sending that email, finally booking the appointment, finally taking the leap, cleaning your house like a possessed Victorian mother, sudden adrenaline to fix your whole life today, throwing yourself into something aggressively, breaking up, quitting, starting without fully thinking it through. The shadow indicator here is you're acting, but you may not know if the action is aligned or reactive until the cycle completes. If life is shifting around you and you feel exposed or seen, then you're most likely at point 7, which is the sun. Real world examples here is people suddenly noticing you or your progress, or unexpected compliments or hate, opportunities appearing or doors slamming in your face, or being confronted with the truth of your choices, feeling like you're on stage, feeling proud and terrified at the same time, getting positive feedback that maybe you don't trust, or things are moving faster than you expected. The shadow indicator here is imposter syndrome. So what if they find out if I'm not ready? If you feel compressed, tired, stretched thin, or like you're in spiritual labor, then you're probably at point 8, which is refinement. So real world examples here is emotional breakdowns for no reason, feeling like you're doing everything wrong, exhaustion that isn't fixed by rest, frustration building pressure behind your ribs, wanting to just quit everything and give up, or thinking that maybe this wasn't a good idea after all. old coping mechanisms flaring, relationships feeling stressed. So the shadow indicator here is that you think that the pressure means that you're failing when actually you're being refined, not punished. If you feel still, quiet, empty but full, or in between versions, like you're in limbo, or like everything's suspended, then you're likely at point 9. So this is where we need to claim our sovereignty. So real world examples is you don't really have a lot to say. Things feel neutral, not exciting or scary. You're reorganizing your home or your life. You're not rushing to the next thing. You feel mature or grown. You're less reactive. You're integrating without trying. You feel like you're floating more than you're pushing or forcing. So, shadow indicator here is mistaking this piece for stagnation or collapsing into bypass. So, if you're at if you feel curious, open, spacious, or ready for a new beginning, you are at point more than likely at point 0, which is the Fool. So this is the next octave. So real world examples here is researching something new, spontaneous inspiration, desire to start fresh, energy rising again, new ideas dropping in, feeling lighter, feeling like something is coming. The shadow indicator here is jumping in immediately before stabilizing point 9 fully. So there's no wrong answer. There's only where you actually are. So now that you know your coordinates, the next step becomes very simple. So let me ask again, where are you right now? There is no quote unquote right place to be, only accurate placement. So if you feel lost, scared, spinning, or in the dark, sorry, the boys are home, so there'll be commotion out there until they get in the house. All right. So if you feel lost, scared, spinning, or in the dark, your path is buried strength or the ritual of light itself. This means that you are in black magic and your system is overwhelmed. You don't need goals, you don't need strategy, and you don't need another pep talk. You need stabilization. You need to get your feet under you. You need your nervous system quiet enough to hear your own soul again. That is what the ritual does, and buried strength will walk you in. Buried strength is free, it's relatively gentle, and it gives you back you. So if your system feels overwhelmed, this is not the time to plan your future. This is the time to get your feet back under you. If you still don't know where you are, your path is booking a Meta Enneagram mapping session with me. In this masterclass, I gave you the mechanics, but if you need help figuring out where you are still or what your next move should be, the mapping session shows you where you are inside them. So if you're oscillating, looping, second guessing, or confused, this session will give you your exact coordinates. It's going to show you what phase you're in, what force is active, what posture is required of you, and where the sabotage is actually happening so you know what to do next. This is your compass. If you want to actually install this architecture into your body so that you know it intrinsically, your path is the 44-day ritual of light transformation journey. This class taught you how the spiral works and who you are inside of it. The 44-day journey teaches your body how to move through it. Theory is cute, but embodiment is what changes your life. This is where the inner compass builds itself. You stop getting stuck at point 3. You stop collapsing at point 8. You learn to feel each phase intuitively. You become someone who can actually complete cycles. You do what needs to be done when it needs to get done, and you trust thy will be done. The ritual doesn't teach the cycle, it imprints it. This isn't about more information. It's about choosing the right interface for where you are. So if you want the full under the hood explanation, your pathway is the grimoire of light. The diagrams, the geometry, the double enneagram, the metaphysics, the why behind every step. This is the textbook, the manual. This is for people who want the mechanics and the meaning. If you want guidance through symbol, story, or divination, then your path is tarot. When you can't see the forest, tarot is the lantern. It's not fortune telling, it is orientation, at least how I read it. If you want more teaching, watch any of the other masterclasses or any of my stuff on YouTube, honestly. But these are going to deepen the architecture. They will help every piece click. And if you want the straightest path, that's going to be a mapping session and then walking the 44-day journey. You'll find your coordinates. I'll help you set your intention, and then you'll walk the spiral in real time. And if you're new and thinking, what the fuck did I just watch? This is where I tell you something that most creators won't. I don't put theory behind a paywall. This architecture, this is the same underlying mechanics that manifestation coaches charge literal thousands of dollars for. And you just got it all for free, because theory doesn't change your life. Embodiment does. Structure does. Practice does. So when you want to feel these cycles working in your life, that is when you work with me. Again, I will email you all of the links if you're here catching this live. Otherwise, oh, and if you are, don't make any decisions until 9:30 p.m. or 9 p.m. So you've got 30 minutes, because the moon is void, of course, and it's not a good idea to spend any money or sign any contracts right now. So just FYI. But if you're watching it after, it won't matter. So all the links are going to be below. Choose the path that matches where you are, not where you think you should be. And if you want to walk beside me as I walk this work myself, I will do it again as I enter the Lunar New Year cycle and begin my next 44-day journey. So join the newsletter and I'll keep you posted. Nothing hidden, no gimmicks, just depth, timing, and the real transmission. So let's take one last breath together. In and out. Feel where you are in your cycle. And when you're ready, choose the path that is calling your name. And if you don't want to wait for me and you want to kickstart your evolutionary cycle sooner, December 27th is a perfect day to start walking the 44-day journey. And the energy of the new year is going to help propel you through when this process starts getting hard. It is perfect. So I highly recommend it. All right, I'm going to stop recording here and I'm going to get to any questions. Thank you again for being here with me. And if you're watching the replay, leave any questions, comments below, subscribe, yada, yada. Thanks for spending a couple of hours with me.